The HomeTech podcast is supported by you. To find out more, go to HomeTech.fm/support. This is the HomeTech podcast for Friday, May 15th. From Sarasota, Florida, I'm Seth Johnson.
And from Denver, Colorado, I'm Jason Griffin. How you doing, Seth?
Good. I can't believe it's mid-May. I'm just shocked.
Yeah. It's, as you can hear in the background, there's a celebration been going on in my house. Mid-May. Celebration of something. Time is like distorting right now, I feel like. Like the days feel super long, but the months are just kind of like a blur. It's not like I'm doing any additional like things different. I don't know. Maybe it's because everybody else around me is paused as well. My wife has been working from home. She's still working from home. Like my daughter is not going to daycare. So maybe it's that part. I don't know. But it definitely feels like the days have been long and the weeks have been compressed and short and the months have just been flying by. Yeah, no doubt.
So speaking of long days, Jason, I understand you have a new role there at your company. Taking on new responsibilities, it sounds like.
I do. Yeah. We recently transitioned. I recently transitioned, I should say, over from Director of Partner Development was my title before. I'm now Director of Product at OneVision, and we're excited about that. It's been a move that we've been talking about for quite a while, well over a year. We certainly think of we're very much in the services business when it comes to our partnerships with integrators, and not by any stretch a traditional software company, although we have a lot of technology and software as part of the platform. But I've long been interested in the world of product management, product development, and we really think it makes sense to sort of take a look at our platform from that perspective, and use a lot of those best practices from the world of product management. And so this was a transition that we've had planned for quite a while, and I've moved into that role several weeks ago, and it's been a lot of fun. This is definitely something I'm really passionate about, so I'm super excited to have the opportunity.
Yeah, so like looking at the entire offering as a single idea, I'm sure that you have like front and back end services that kind of flow into one thing that you can call what you guys do at OneVision, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we've got our support, the white label 24/7 support. We've got our marketing where we do landing pages and email campaigns and payment processing and subscription management for our partners. We've got partner development, which is kind of the change management, training, onboarding, customer success arm. And of course, all of these departments are developing and evolving at a fast pace. And so we really realized that we needed a kind of one layer up cohesive management. Like you said, how are we thinking about this platform? How are we taking feedback from the field and really incorporating that in a cohesive way, and making sure that everybody across all of our different departments, we're I think about a 45-person company at this point. So we are at a size now where it's pretty critical that you make sure everybody kind of has a shared understanding of what the outcomes are that we need to be thinking about, and is keeping those in mind as you make day-to-day, week-to-week, and month-to-month decisions about priorities.
I like one of the things you said there. It kind of flows into like your project management background and doing project management. Like one of the things that I always tried to do and never was very successful at doing, but I definitely tried was using the feedback, the feedback loop, right? Like, so you do your product, you do your project, you complete it, supposedly complete. I'm putting completed, like I'm putting my air quotes, because everyone knows that no integration company can ever complete a project. And then like you take the feedback that comes from that, whether it be from the guys in the field that did the project, whether it comes from the customer, and you kind of try and roll those experiences, somehow formalize them and roll them into the next project, and create like an ever evolving type product management type system where the mistakes that you make on project number 1 don't get transferred over to project number 2. At least that was the goal. That's
a good goal. That's a good goal. Yeah, you want to get a little bit better on every project, and that's actually one of our core values as a company. In fact, is Mistakes are okay as long as you learn from them, own them, don't repeat them. Going out and making mistakes is good. In fact, I did an article in Residential Systems recently with just a few of these sort of best practices from project management or from product management that we've been talking about a lot and thinking about a lot lately. And one of them is this adage that's it's kind of become a truism now for modern product teams. It's certainly not a new or novel idea in the world of product, but it's the idea of, fail fast, embrace failure, really figure out how to make that part of your part of your DNA. Because if you're, it sounds cliched to say, but truly, we're all guilty of it. We have a new thing we want to bring to market, and it takes us forever, and we're so slow to get it out there because we're afraid of having something out there that's not totally perfect. And honestly, the best features and best solutions that you develop are very rarely version 1. Version 2, version 3, that's always where the big insights and the big breakthroughs, in my experience, tend to come. So getting out there, making mistakes and learning how to learn from them is there's actually an art to that.
Right. And translating this over to like integration businesses, like nobody's perfect. You aren't perfect. I have worked for a couple of guys who thought they were perfect, and that attitude definitely can be good in some respects, right? Like it can be good to be kind of cocky and realize like at least in some like maybe some sales situations that could be a good attitude to have. But when it comes to like repeating mistakes repeatedly and never being able to fix them because you're right, that becomes a problem. So it's always
cardinal sin.
It's always a good thing to look out for. Yeah. Don't repeat the problems. They're just not good.
That's right. Yeah, Greg posted in the chat room here, project managers, so not product, but project managers' job is to put themselves out of a job by completing the project, which is funny. And to an extent, I agree with it. But, what's interesting is I think that one of the things that I know as a former integrator still challenges the industry like crazy is that as HomeTech pros, we're very much unlike a drywaller, painter, or even an electrician. Like so many of these other trades, there's this very clear, easy to delineate finish line where the project is actually done. And in technology, it's much more muddy and gray as to when it's done. And I would argue almost that to an extent, it's never done. It's a living, breathing system more than any other system in the home, I would argue. And so actually thinking about your work, if you're an integrator, as a product, more so than a project, it's an interesting framework because you put these systems out into a client's home and you've got to support them then for life. And so applying these sort of best practices of constant kind of iteration and improvement, there's some really interesting takeaways there that I think no matter what trade, no matter what part of the industry you work in, there's some good stuff here.
I might push back a little bit on the projects being complete, because I think projects stages can be complete, right? Because I think what you're talking about is again the feedback loop and the iteration of a project's life cycle. Like, yeah, it may never be done, but the phases can get done. So like rough-in gets done, you kind of know when your rough-in gets done. And you can take the feedback from the guys like, hey, you didn't mark, like this always happened to me. You didn't mark the thing on the floor, right? So I didn't know where to put that wire, like that was the symbols. Like I would always go out and write these little symbols and I thought they made sense to me, but then like they didn't make sense to the guys out in the field. So they'd call me up and like, they'd take a picture. Like, what the heck is this? I'm like, well, I sent you out there with like this map floor plan and, it had a symbol that looked like that. And I drew it on the floor and they're like, oh, can't you just write like TV instead of this elaborate sketch and that you've drawn on the floor? I'm like, yeah, I can do that next time. So like I think that those if you think of like having a customer or having a project as like, and even as a homeowner, having a home, like as a project in of itself, like, yes, those things never will finish. And you will always have an open project to complete by having that feedback loop coming back in. My system's not working today. Well, okay, that's part of the project as well. But I think one of the biggest things that we do have a problem with, and I will agree with you there, is like the integrators can't tend to have a problem, and we always did. They tend to have a problem of not knowing when that all the check boxes have been checked off, and when the check boxes that have been paid for have been checked off, right? And there's certainly become, like, at the end of that project, there's certainly become a bunch of check boxes that the customer starts adding on. If you get in there a little too late, we banned Friday installs for this very reason. No installs on Friday. You know why? Because inevitably you'd get one TV up and going, right? The family room TV. You'd get that one up and going for the weekend, and over the weekend, the client had time to find out everything that was wrong about the system and make up another checklist for you to go through before you were able to finish the project on Monday. So we banned Friday. Friday was out. If you wanted to get installed on Friday, too bad. No, we as a company, we just would not do that. It was reserved for something else. There were other reasons we did that too, because you can't pick up things, you can't buy things on Friday to get back out to you have to go back on Saturday. So, like, there's many reasons never to have installs on Friday, but this was definitely one of them, where if you left the system in half working order in an unexpected, improv way, the customer would always come back on Monday and be like, I don't really like how this works, blah, blah, blah. And you'd have to spend longer time defending, that kind of like adds that less confidence in your work type thing to their
Right.
mind. And it just kind of like needles in there. So it's a conversation or a situation you just want to avoid. And I getting over the line can be done. It just, you have to draw that line hard in the sand. When the drywall's up, that line is definitely a full featured line. But I think that it's up to the integrator and the salesperson and the people working in the field to say, well, this is when our project does stop, but we will be happy to add that piece on. But it's, set expectations, all sorts of stuff that go along with getting those other check boxes done.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you completely, and I certainly was not trying to imply that it's never done. Sort of throw your hands up and accept it, right? But
some guys do that,
yeah.
right? Some guys,
which is unfortunate. I think that the analogy I like to use is if you're a homeowner and you just maybe you just built a new house or you just had a big remodel done. You can walk around the house and, like, if you go turn on every sink and water comes out, you can flush every toilet, then the plumber's done. If you can walk up to every light switch and turn on the lights and plug a device into every outlet and power comes on, then the electrician's done. If you walk into every room and the walls are the color that you expect them to be, then the painter's done. There are very clear ways to tell. Now imagine that you're a homeowner and you sit down in your media room and you pick up the remote and the TV's hanging on the wall. You use the remote, you turn on the TV, but you go to log in, you go to watch your favorite show on Hulu and the Hulu app isn't installed. Or you turn on the show and then you want to play the sound in the kitchen speakers, but you can't because you forgot, sidebar, that you value engineered that out of the system 8 months ago, right? Or whatever the case may be. Like in the client's mind now, this isn't done. And Greg is 100% right in the chat room. Clear scope is one of the biggest ways that you can avoid this. And too many people I've seen confuse a proposal with a scope of work. And the scope should be very easy to understand. And in plain English, what's the functionality that you bought? But anyways, all of this is to say that ultimately, I would argue the hardest part of the job is to, at some point, get that clarity with your client about, we are now done and we are moving into service, and then providing that service, of course, in a way that's sustainable and profitable, and all of that's a whole separate conversation. But there are some interesting parallels here. I'm going to share a screenshot, and I'll share a link to an article as well in the chat room. There's this concept from software called Day 0, Day 1, Day 2, and the central sort of gist of this is, as everything's kind of gone to the cloud, Day 2, you can see, is where you get into this sort of iterative feedback loop where it's just, there's this constant, day 2 is after everything is deployed, right? And that's where you get into the most complexity, and you've got to keep everything iterating and maintained and online and working. And too many companies are focused on Day 0 and Day 1, and they kind of treat Day 2 as like this sort of necessary evil instead of treating it like, hey, this is something we really need to bear down on and get serious about.
Oh, yeah. And this definitely articulates that. This is a pretty good, a nice little drawing of how that, like, everything kind of phases in over time. And then, customer service starts on day 2. Forget about that one. You always forget about that one. Customer service. Like, oh, yeah, we have to explain to people how this works, right? Yeah, there's going to be issues that come up. They have to get fixed. That's all comes
right.
from day 2 on. Yeah.
Well, my wife has now decided to vacuum the kitchen above me. So if some of that's coming through in my recording, I apologize. Thin walls here. But anyways, no, these are great conversations. And again, I think that no matter what industry, or, even if you're not in the home tech industry, no matter what industry you're in, or if you are, no matter where you sit in the industry, there are really interesting principles from the world of product management that I think apply really well universally.
Yeah.
So that term product management, of course, most people associate it with software development these days, but it's a really interesting, really rich area of study, and I love being a student of it, and the fact that I now get to do that full time for my job is just an amazing opportunity.
It's embarrassing. Like, this is what I do every day. Like, and I don't take some of this stuff seriously, like, because like I'm a one-man show in some respects, but at the same time, we're a smaller company, and we all have our little roles that we play. So like, I know that if I need QA done, I send it to this person. And I know if I need testing, I send it to this person. And if I have any questions about like what a dealer or installer is going to run into, I'll send software to this person. So it kind of works for us, but we're definitely kind of like what you were saying before. We're definitely in the software business, and like, because all of our stuff's online. We have an online store. Like, I forget that I have to maintain that too, right? So like, the credit cards have to get processed, right? So like, if the server is down, which it doesn't go down. Jason. That's a trick.
Let's get that straight.
Then, yeah, it does not go down. Not anymore. We used to have problems. Not anymore. I've got them fixed. So yeah, the website is always up. But yeah, if there's no website, there's no orders. If there's no orders, there's no money coming in. It basically flows. No paycheck. So it's one of those things. Like, everything that we do definitely comes from the software thing. I probably need to start looking into the software lifecycle too, and seeing how I can apply some of that stuff to my trade as well.
It's fun stuff.
Yeah,
for sure. Cool. Well, what do you say, Seth? Jump into some HomeTech headlines?
Yep, let's do it.
Wink upset customers last week with the announcement of a new surprise subscription service that will be required to use the Wink product going forward. Wink, which was not a subscription service when customers purchased the product at the time, said it would give customers, get this, Seth, a whopping 1 week grace period before changing to a subscription, or before charging a subscription fee. As of this week, Wink has announced that it will extend the grace period for another week. How gracious. Giving customers till May 20th to pull the trigger. The subscription fees were originally set to kick in on May 13th.
Today, as we record.
Yeah. And incidentally, Seth, I think, and I legitimately didn't connect these dots until right this moment. Perfect corollary here to what we were just talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. A company that was focused on day 0 and day 1 and kind of forgot that, like, supporting and maintaining a platform like this for the long run is complicated and expensive, and is now having to, try to figure out a model to stay viable. And they're an extreme case. Obviously, Wink has been on the ropes for a while, but really interesting to think about.
Yeah, no, super interesting. What's funny is a friend of the show, Tony. I don't know his last name. Tony something. Just has Tony in Indianapolis. Was contacting me on Twitter. He just sent me a Wink version 1 hub for the museum. So I gave him a shout out on Twitter, but I do want to give a shout out on the show that
the collection grows.
Yeah, the collection
grows. Love it.
He offered a Staples Connect version 2, but guess what? I already had one. There's already pristine in the box, untouched. Staples Connect version 2.
Beautiful.
So, Yeah. This is wild. It is kind of funny. We were kind of just talking about that, and this is the first story we talk about. Yeah, it does flow into that because you release something, a $70 hub, and what happens when you don't take over the world and the sales start to slow, and maybe your product company changes hands 3 or 4 times, and now you're owned by Will.i.am. Like what happens to the product at that point? And yeah, you're now your $70 hub that you've bought is going to cost you another $60 a year. And while like, honestly, if I was a Wink customer and I liked their product and I kind of like all things said, understood kind of where they were, this is the way to like support the company, right? Like that's what I would think, like $5 a month, not bad. I pay more in coffee than $5 per month. So like, yeah, it's not end of the world if I have to pay $60 a year for something like this. But at the same time, I don't want it to go. I don't want the company to go away, right? Because Wink should have some longevity to it. Because from what I understand, I think I used a couple of their projects, but like people who used it did like it. So this will be asking those people in kind of a painful way in the middle of a pandemic to put their money where their mouth is and pony up some money, pony up $5 a month to keep the company afloat. I don't see them. I mean, there's definitely no way that they're going to keep Wink going if they aren't getting income coming to the company to keep it progressing and improving and that kind of thing. You have to have some type of income stream.
Yeah. Anthony says worth the $5 a month to not have to sort of buy all your gear again or redo your system.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty clear $5 a month it's not the dollar amount here that has people up in arms. I would assume, at least by and large, this just wasn't handled tactfully. I mean, I just don't think you can give people a 1 week notice, even if it's only $5. You gotta handle it more graciously than that. And I suspect that a lot of this is psychological, because there's no rational reason why I shouldn't. Maybe that's too strong. I get that, money can be tight for people, but I have a hard time imagining that a lot of people are really up in arms because of the dollar amount. It's a very negligible monthly fee, but everybody has expectations, and the expectations around Wink are it's a cheap hub and there's no subscription. And so you go pull the rug out from under people, and of course there's going to be backlash.
Right. So if your $5 a month 6 months from now doesn't bring you new features, it doesn't bring you, a substantially improved app, if your $5 a month doesn't start doing that for you and improving on and building on the product that they have, then maybe it's time to start looking for something else. Because then, a couple months from now, say you spend $30 more than the $70, you dropped $100 whole dollars on your Wink at that point. Like it might be time to look into something else and moving over. Matthew is saying, look at Habitat. We talked to those guys on the show as well. Maybe moving all the devices over and your automations over to that. We talked to Smart Things last week.
Home Assistant.
I'm sorry. We talked to Home Assistant last week. That might be a good platform as well. So it's tough though. Like I can totally understand like why they would need to do this. I don't understand. Honestly, I don't understand the backlash. But I guess it's over maybe the time frame. Having a week, they probably should have given everybody 30 days heads up and said.
Well, I think there's going to be a vocal minority here who are going to be up in arms probably no matter what. Like even if Wink had come out with a 90-day heads up, there would still be a vocal minority shouting and kicking and screaming about this. But I suspect the big fat middle of the bell curve are probably people who are looking at this and going like, oh, this just feels icky. Like a week, really? Like that wouldn't sit well with me. I'm with you, Seth. If I really loved Wink, I would pay the money in hopes that it would help them remain viable. But I think given Wink's history, and like I said earlier, I mean, they've been on the ropes. There's been questions about their viability for so long now that this could very well just have the opposite effect, where people are going to say like, okay, this is the this is the death throes of Wink, and now's the time to start figuring out a plan B.
Yeah, I wasn't already thinking that. I was already thinking that this is the death throes when this came across our radar. And oddly enough, the way we recorded the interview last week was a week before. We made a joke about Wink being out of business by the time the interview went live. During that interview, 2 weeks later, the day after the show, we recorded our show and edited things down. This came out, so it was kind of funny timing, and that we were joking about Wink's demise, and then they sent this out. So immediately I thought, yeah, this feels like a desperate move. They need cash coming in the next 10 days. And to do that, they're going to start charging people $5 a month to keep their automation on.
Right.
No, it doesn't look good. Yes, it's a little bit of money. And I guarantee you that the vast, vast majority of that middle or even the vocal minority that is complaining online do not even own Wink equipment. They probably, I guarantee you.
Sadly, you're probably right.
Yeah, it's just people complaining complaining to complain. And if you are a Wink customer, the writing may or may not be on the wall. If you do like the product, you do like your app, you do like the organization, the $5 is going to be, the tax for keeping them alive, because they didn't win out the home automation war with their hub. They were up against companies like, Apple, who put a hub in every single phone that they shipped, or, Amazon, who decided to release this magical box you could talk to that would randomly work and call up to the cloud for hundreds of milliseconds later, give you a light that turns on, maybe or may not turn on. So like they weren't thinking that all this was going to happen when they came up with the $70 a month thing, I'm sure. And, now they've got to figure out how to make the company move forward and keep continuing. I don't know if this $5 a month is going to save them. I have no idea what their financials are. But if I was a Wink customer and I love the product, I like what it did, $5 a month, would definitely be worth it for me.
Yeah,
it would definitely, like the chat room pointed out, it would definitely be worth not having to redo all my gear. just keep it working. I don't care. I'm not changing this right now. So $5 here, have $10. I would pay $10 for that.
Well, some great dialogue in the chat room here. People pointing out, if this, then that integration for a garage door. Apparently, they were charging something like $10 a year. There was still an uproar there.
Yep.
Matthew says, sadly, people having to pay for something free is auto backlash, regardless. And I totally agree. I think we'll move on from this story, but it was said to me once, and this always stuck with me, that one of the hardest parts about business is that you're always competing with people who are going out of business.
Oh, yeah.
And, like Wink was very much came along in that heyday of everyone else, like you talked about, where it was just this, we talk about it like it's ancient history, but, this has only been over the last 5 years, like just this hub mania and low prices. And a lot of this is still going on. And there's just so much of a question mark around, are these businesses viable in the long run? And what does that mean for consumers? So really interesting case study here.
Well, speaking of financials and interesting case studies, which will probably be, on some master's doctoral thesis statement or, master's degree write-up, Emerald Holding has released their 2020 fiscal first quarter financial results, and the organization makes no bones about it. It has been hit very hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. Emerald, of course, is the company, the show company that holds the CEDIA trade show, which is kind of why this is coming up in our conversations here. The company announced that in the first quarter of fiscal 2020, the period ending in March 31st, sales declined 27.4% to $99.7 million. Wow. And the company had the biggest net loss in its history, losing $570.1 million. Crazy numbers to look at here.
Yeah. Yeah, this is from Strategy. Ted Green's site, and you really feel for these companies. Like this is really affecting real people, and real people are really suffering because of this. I mean, these are really rough numbers.
Yeah.
It says that he says the numbers are pretty sobering. Emerald reported that revenues in the first quarter of fiscal 2020 again came in at 99.7 million. This is 27.4 lower than the first quarter of last year. And he goes on to say, let's see, Emerald reported a net loss of 571 million, way off their profit of 26.5 million this quarter a year ago. So from a profit of 26.5 in Q1 of last year to a loss of 570 million in Q1 of this year. So staggering numbers here. And, it just, I don't want to contribute to the problem by speculating about what's going to happen in September, but it's for CEDIA, for our channel, but that's just one trade show.
Yes.
And their whole business is in trade shows. And it's just, you have these industries like events and travel and entertainment and all these industries that are just being decimated by this virus. And so it's certainly something to be thankful for. I think for those of us in the home technology business, at least what I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing directly is that most of us are still gainfully employed and staying pretty busy. There's all sorts of question marks about the slowdown and what 6 months from now look like. But for now, we're all still busy and we're all still working. And man, this just reading this makes me grateful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw that they had to let go 18% of their staff, I believe, 18%. And they cut back on expenses extreme. I mean, that was kind of one of the first things that every business did, I think, was cut back expenses. These guys have a bigger road ahead of them. I think they also took a $40 million loan just to kind of float things along for the foreseeable future. But you're right. The losses, this losses that they are showing come from just the cancellation of a couple events in the first quarter for this company. They've canceled everything for the first half of the year. And the question mark is the rest of the year, when they have the vast majority of their business, what's going to happen? I think they had something like 80 shows for the entire year. So all what does that come down to? 60 or something, or in the last part of the year, including the CEDIA show. So will be interesting to see what happens. I have no idea. I know that there's very little interest in that I've come across from people who are willing to go. Of course, we had the story last week that Crestron was going to show up with a booth this year, and that's interesting. One of the notes I will say at the bottom of this is there's a big question about insurance, and will the insurance hold up and pay for some of this? They do have cancellation policies. Like if they have to cancel a show, they do have insurance for that, because why wouldn't you? But the question now becomes, will the insurance be able to pay?
Are those companies solvent?
Well, yeah. Well, they're insurance companies. But the question is
Yeah.
will they pay for? Will they pay for a show? Like let's put CEDIA as an example, because I think he did in the story. Like say Colorado is kind of like opened up for business, or so to speak, in September. And Emerald decides like due to the lack of attendance, they're just going to cancel the show.
Right.
Like what happens? Will the insurance company actually let them cancel? And that will come down to being a big yes or no. Like how will they be able to navigate that? Jason, one thing I think that we're both probably grateful is we don't have to worry about this too much. But man, I do feel for these companies, because they are going to go through and continue to go through a tough time in the foreseeable future. I mean, as far as I can see, 5-10 years, companies like this are going to have troubles getting 20,000-30,000 people back into a building.
Yeah. Yep. It is really a lot to think about there. I saw Apple's, released their plans to do their developer conference all virtual. Yep. And I suspect we're going to see a ton more of that. Not exactly going out on a limb by saying that.
Infocom is all. I'm getting notices now to sign up for Infocom virtual stuff. So yeah, it's looks like that's going to be the way forward for the time being. And There was a lot of discussion around the social aspects of the show, and we certainly partook in those, right? Like we had the HomeTech happy hours a handful of times, and would love to have those again, meet up with everybody and have a couple of drinks. But when will we be able to get back to a show and do something like that again? I don't know. That will be missed. That will probably be more missed than having to trudge around and a show floor and shake hands.
No question. No question. All right. Well, moving on here. What are your clients doing at home during the novel coronavirus lockdown? Apparently, they're listening to a whole lot of music. This from CE Pro. That's the word from Sonos, which revealed that among the 10 million homes worldwide in which it has devices, listening hours increased by 32% in March, and get this, a whopping 48% in April, as consumers are stuck in their homes during the lockdown. That's quite a big uptick.
Not bad. I can tell you, I mean, we've been listening to more music here, but I think it's more attributed to the fact that we are actually home and not at work during those hours. So, interesting that it's up almost 50% in April.
Yeah.
Wow.
Unfortunately, this is all rolled in with a lot of rough news from Sonos as well. Their Q2 report showed revenues fell 17%. Despite a rough Q2, the CEO Spence is upbeat about the achievements from the company. They've released several new products. Listening hours, obviously a good sign of engagement, but yeah, they're getting hit just like everybody else by this slowdown in terms of their overall sales and revenues. So kind of a mixed bag here for them.
I can tell you from our standpoint, there was definitely a stumbling point. Like it feels like everybody kind of stumbled, but man, our guys are all back to work. So I don't know. I can tell you this month has been a really good month compared to last month. So it seems like things may be getting back on track for that. I don't know. I'm sure it's heavily region dependent and country dependent, depending on like how bad you're being hit with this. But it seems, I don't know. We've been seeing some orders come through. We're just like, who's out there doing this? It's like somebody decided to pull the trigger on something big, and there it goes. Okay, wow, that's crazy. So it's been a good month this month, but last month and the month before were definitely like stumbling blocks. Where you're just like,
yeah. Well, another interesting, separate but related to Sonos as well. A separate note. Kind of going to sound like a broken record here, but I actually just went back in my head again to day one, day two conversation, right? Because we've seen Sonos now coming out with their radio service. There's been a lot of conversation. We've had some sort of surface level dialogue on this show about does Sonos try to get into services and more of a recurring revenue model? Again, they're very much a company that's been focused on one-time hardware sales since their inception. And is that model sustainable? Again, I think you keep coming back to that question as you look at the landscape, and it's an interesting one, because then on the other side, you've got subscription fatigue and everybody getting, so many monthly charges now. At what point does that become a factor? And it's a complex challenge.
Yeah. I guarantee you there's more. Margin built into Sonos products than there was a $70 Wink Hub.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
maybe more than 100%, Jason. But there's a lot more margin built into those products. So they were definitely selling them, or are selling them at a premium. And but the question is, what happens when you have saturated your entire market, right? Like what happens when there's no one else to sell to, and sales start falling off because of that? Well, you've got product out there that's lasted 10 years and you can't kill it. Like you literally have to send a kill code to it to kill it. That becomes an odd problem to have and stumble through at the end of last year. So it'll be interesting to see. I think they'll be okay for the short term. It's definitely a good product, and they're coming out with new product lines. So
yeah, no, this doesn't strike me as an existential problem right now for Sonos, but it is interesting to see as they've released Sonos Radio and conversations start to pick up about where they're going to go next in terms of services. I just continue to think about that recurring model is something that everybody's got to sort of grapple with in their own way.
I tried listening to that Sonos radio.
What's the verdict?
It's not great. It's not great. I mean, it's perfect for, and this is where I really think it's going. It's perfect for a department store. Like, it's perfect for, a hair salon. It's perfect for a small business that needs a Sonos, some music put into it. But man, it's not great. Not very fun to listen to. That's for sure. So, Google's streamlined Nest Aware service is finally rolling out in 19 markets, several months after it was first announced. As of this week, you can now pay $60 per year or $6 per month to provide 30 days of event video history for all your Nest security devices instead of paying per camera. Pay $120 per year or $12 per month. And Nest Aware Plus will both double the event history to 60 days and offer 10 days of 24/7 history.
Got it.
It sounds like to me Nest has moved from a simple, cellular thermostat cameras here and there to like a complex Comcast cable model here. Like, I'm so confused by this payment program.
Yeah, well, I mean, my understanding of it is it's largely because before you had to, when it was just one or two devices, you just charge per device, but people are now, they're trying to get people with more and more of these devices. And so you got to try to simplify that pricing, which appears to be what they're doing here.
This is like what the way the Ring is set up.
Yeah. Yeah. Some other interesting things here. It says your Nest speakers and smart displays will let you know about concerning sounds such as breaking glass, smoke alarm. So they have some awareness there. And then it also goes on to say, and you can take care of remote relatives if they have a Nest Hub Max. Not sure if that's like an aging in place play. That's what it sounds like. You can switch over to this new subscription if you're an existing Aware customer. You'll need to migrate your Nest account to Google. Migrate from a Nest account to Google if you haven't already. And then one other thing that was interesting in this story, Seth, is they're trying to sweeten the pot for newcomers. They've got the Nest Hub price has dropped to $90 from its prior $130. And the indoor Nest Cam is dropping from $200 to $130. So some significant price drops in the hardware.
Yeah, and I really did like that Nest Hub. But man, I've got to tell you, I've started pulling out these devices left and right. My HomePods have left the desk. They're back in their little boxes up for the museum when Apple.
Is that right?
Yeah, I've taken them off. They did not integrate well with very much of anything. And since they only really worked well with Apple Music, once I bored myself of paying for that, like, why bother having them? They sounded great. They sound much better than the speakers I have here, but I can't make my computer audio play over them, and I can't, do a couple of this. So it is basically just go back to the little Mackie monitors that I picked up that don't sound, half as good. But I've been pulling those out, and we've pretty much pulled all the Amazons out, and the Google thing is, it's in the box as well. So like the world of like voice assistants has all but gone away, other than like Siri on the phone and your headphones and that kind of thing. We're not playing in that world anymore.
Interesting. Well, more devices for the museum.
Yeah, one of these days. Yeah.
All right, moving on here to our last headline of the week. Tech analyst John Prosser, we'll get to the pronunciation thing later, tweeted on May 7th that a new Apple TV 4K is ready to ship. This is our first indication that the timing for a new Apple TV 4K is imminent. If this is accurate, it is a confirmation that Apple's revamped set-top box will be considerably more powerful than the original Apple TV 4K, which debuted in 2017 and has not yet received a hardware refresh. So to quote this tweet word for word, says new Apple TV 4K with A12X, 64 gigabyte, 128 gigabyte is ready to ship. Codename Neptune T1125, another one of those that could drop anytime. So anyways, the A12X there is the reference to the processor, which sounds like it's pretty powerful. Powerhouse of a chip. It says this is the this is the processor inside of the 2018 iPad Pro. So pretty powerful little device here.
Yeah, and a big bump in specs for the Apple TV. If they do indeed ship this, it will be interesting. One of the things it points out here is that it would be good for games within the Apple TV Arcade subscription that they have going on, which would be cool. I tell you, I've been I bought one of these before. I've bought the Apple. I have a 4K Apple TV, right? And I have the previous generation, which was not 4K but looked just about the same. I think it's a little less tall than the 4K. And the other day I realized that not on my 4K TV is the regular Apple TVs. Like forever, we've been not like the old one. The one I thought was the old one was the new one, and it's just packed up in a box over behind me on a shelf. And we were taking that to like hotels when we traveled. Do you remember those times? And
feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, I know. So I was hooking the 4K, nice 4K Apple TV up to like hotel room TVs, which
how funny.
were probably like 720p with Auto Motion Plus turned on, and then the not crummy little Apple TV has been serving me well here at the house without me realizing, until I hooked it up the other day and I realized like, oh, this is the new one. Because I can't tell the difference. They're just little black boxes. Yeah,
you need more pixels. That's
so
funny.
I'll have to swap those out one of these days and see if I get a better picture.
Yeah, we've got a 4K Apple TV, and when I read this story, for me certainly there's no reason to go out and pull the trigger on this. I have no issues with the performance or storage space on ours, but I get it. It does appear to really be aimed at gaming. Is probably the most compelling use case for this extra processing. And that's kind of interesting to think about, because gaming on these devices is a pretty novel thing still today. But if you read into this article, and we'll link to it, this particular one is from Digital Trends, they talk quite a bit about that. And it does seem to be shaping up as an area of competitive differentiation for many of these companies. So gaming on these set-top boxes is going to be more and more common. Other thing that this story mentioned that I thought was noteworthy was a kids mode. Now, this will very likely not be tied to the new hardware. This is a software upgrade that will let parents select which apps and content kids get to use, as well as set a maximum amount of screen time per session. So that sounds kind of cool for the parents out there. It sounds like that may be coming down the pike as well.
Yeah, there's very similar services built into the iPads and phones already. So it's nice to see that kind of brought across the entire product line to the forgotten stepchild that is the Apple TV, I guess, because it's like literally gets everything last.
That's right.
Here you go. Here's a hand-me-down processor. Here's a hand-me-down software upgrade that we should have put in there years ago.
That's right.
But I'm always glad to see things like this getting hardware bumps, because I remember there was a long time that we went with Apple TVs that they just didn't change. So it's very nice to see them come out and put new hardware out. Hopefully we see this soon.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, all the links and topics we've discussed on this week's episode can be found in our show notes at HomeTech.fm/303. While you're there, don't forget to sign up for our weekly newsletter. We'll send you show reminders and other occasional updates about all the great stuff going on here in the world of home tech.
And don't forget, you can join us live in the chat room Wednesdays starting sometime between 7 and 7:30 p.m. Eastern. You can find out more about that at HomeTech.fm/live.
All right, Seth. Well, we couldn't decide on one pick of the week this week, so I think we're going to go with two.
We've got two, and one of them is something that I discovered today that you have known about for, I don't know, months. That you turns out you tell me. Yeah.
So I've only known about this for maybe a month.
Okay.
I wish I would have known about it a long time ago.
So Zoom has this annoying feature in it, among many other annoying features. But one of the most annoying features is that it shows you yourself talking, and inevitably your eyes, I don't know why this happens, but your eyes will wander over and you'll just be staring at yourself talking. It's the strangest feeling. And I hate it. It must go away. Turns out you can turn that off this whole time. I've been using Zoom. It's been on there. I don't know why I've never clicked the little button to figure out how to turn that off. You just hover over your image. You click the little dot, dot, dot menu thing that has a bunch of stuff under it and say, hide self view. Done. Go away, Seth. No more Seth.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of, I mean, it's not terribly hidden, but I know that I was looking to figure this out. So we use Ring Central Meetings at work, which is powered by Zoom. It's basically Zoom. And so I've been using that for like 3 years. I've been battling with this sort of fatigue that comes from just constantly sort of self-consciously catching yourself staring at yourself. I'm on video calls like all day long. And I finally, somebody at work told me about this. And I was just like, were you going to tell me about this sooner? You know, like, because interestingly, it only came up because I've seen several articles talking about this phenomenon called like Zoom fatigue that everyone's experiencing now, where you're on these video calls all day and it's very unnatural because you're looking at a screen with like 5, 8, 10 or more people all staring right back at you, which is not typically, unless you're up presenting, typically if you're in a meeting, not everybody in the room is just like sitting right in front of you, staring back at you.
Right.
Right. So that's part of it. And then the other thing that I've seen cited is the fact that, you know, you're kind of looking at yourself all day. That's pretty unnatural too. So yeah, hide self view. Found that probably a month ago. And I turned my self view off on all my meetings now. The only thing I wish is that in preferences, you could disable it by default.
That's what I'm like, why is this not a feature? Like they have so many other features lost in their preferences view. Like why they need, you know what, Jason? They need a director of product. And they will probably have an easier time. Actually, I know Zoom is like, they've really, I want to give them a hard time on this, but they have really stepped up their game when it comes to like releasing new stuff and security features. They've done a good job of becoming like
they're the king of the hill now. So like you gotta poke a little fun at them, right?
Yeah. So like I just can't believe this isn't like turn off my self view. Like why is that not in the video preferences that I have to look at it? Why haven't I found this little thing under this random, like I don't like looking at myself talk. Why would I ever hover on my picture and look under that menu? Like why would I ever do that? I never have done that. And there you go. 3 years of this, Jason. I can't imagine.
It's good to have if like you're actually doing a presentation or a webinar and you want to make sure like my camera has different zoom levels and white balance and all that kind of stuff that you can adjust. And so, you know, if you are doing any sort of formal presentation, obviously it's helpful to be able to see yourself and make sure that everything is as you want it. But once that's all set up, then yeah, I go ahead and turn it off because it is very distracting.
Absolutely. So, well, we've got one pick of the week. We got a second pick of the week. Jason, this is you, always with the pronunciation.
This one is me. And, you know, I'm not proud of this problem, Seth. I have a terrible time with pronunciation. And so I don't know, like, I think you have to have Android for this, Google Lens. I've looked on the App Store. I don't think this is an iOS thing. So I don't know that this is going to help me, but this is amazing, Seth. Google Lens, you can now point it at like words, and it'll basically tell you how to pronounce them.
This is made for you.
This is solving a huge problem for me.
We're gonna be using this on the show from now on as like a little cheat sheet. So you may hear
you'll see me
pause and do some robotic voice. Like
that's right. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's available on iOS though.
Oh,
it's not like an app. I think it's like built into Android.
Interesting.
So that's kind of disappointing. But if you share the problem that I have, go check this out. Google Lens, by the way, sounds really cool. I like that you can like point it at, I don't know, I'm kind of a nerd like this. And so I've got kind of an interest in learning more about like the different types of trees and birds and stuff around my house. And it got me to thinking the other day, like if you have a tree in your yard and you want to know what kind of tree it is, How do you Google that?
Oh, there's an app for that. I know there is. There's like a little app. I will find what app that was. And like if you hear a bird singing or something and you want to know what bird it is, like you can send it off to this service and it will listen to the bird and it'll tell you what it was. Like, oh, that's a chickadee or a cardinal or whatever. So yeah. There is a
but it just does get into this whole other sort of next realm of like AI and search, because you don't even really think about it, but everything when you Google and look up information, you've got to have the words to describe what you're looking at.
Right.
And with something like Google Lens, like it's taking it to that next level of, we don't need that as humans. We can look at something and see and say, oh, that's a car. Right. But when you're looking at something that you don't even have the words to describe, anyways, I'm off the rails now.
No,
but this looks pretty cool.
There is an app for it. I will try and find it, and maybe I'll put it in the show notes. Maybe we'll have it for the pick of the week next week. Finding songbirds with the HomeTech podcast.
That's right. There's like interesting applications for that technology for sure. So anyways, maybe it can help me. Lord knows it's needed.
All right. Well, if you have any feedback, questions, comments, picks of the week, or great ideas for the show, give us a shout. Our email address is feedback@HomeTech.fm, or you can visit HomeTech.fm/feedback and fill out a form.
And we want to give a big thank you to everyone who supports the show, but especially to those of you who financially support the podcast through our Patreon page. If you're interested in learning more about how you can support our efforts here, head on over to HomeTech.fm/support. and learn how you can support us for as little as $1 a month. Any pledge over $5 will give you a big shout out on air, but every single pledge will get you an invite to our private Slack chat, The Hub, where you and other supporters of the show can gather every day for all sorts of fun conversations about home technology and beyond. So we'd love to have you.
And if you want to help out but can't support the show financially, we totally understand. We'd appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes or a positive rating in the podcast app of your choice.
Absolutely. All right, Seth. Well, that'll do it for this week. Fun episode. Enjoyed sitting down and catching up with you. Busy week.
Yeah. Well, a quick lawn update. I've got my grass seeds down, fertilized.
I've been on pins and needles.
It's a big pile of mud. Yeah. I'm sure you have been. It's a big pile of mud outside. And the reason it's mud is because I have a sprinkler system. I turned it on and I was thinking like, we were talking about this a little bit in the pre-show. Like, I need to put my transformer. I need to find my 24-volt transformer, and I couldn't find it. Greg had an excellent point. I think it was Greg had an excellent point in the chat that a doorbell transformer will work. And guess what? I do have a doorbell transformer.
There you go.
And I will be using my doorbell transformer to power up my sprinkler system until I get a ratio or something special that I can control with an app to water the mud pile that I have outside until green grass starts appearing.
Well, Greg for the win.
Yes, thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks to everyone who hung out in the chat room this week. That was a bunch of fun. We had a bunch of folks hanging out with us this week. We appreciate it. Thanks, everybody else, for tuning in and supporting the show. And Seth, I hope you have a great weekend.
Yep. Have a good weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Take care.